So I'm here with Benny Parihar, the founder of CRYO, a health and wellness entrepreneur with fingers in a lot of health and wellness pies. What we're going to do today is talk about a little bit about your personal biohacking kind of approaches to the situation, mindset, etc., as well as the business side of things, like what's going on inside your different entities, inside your different businesses. There's a whole handful of them. So over to you. How are you feeling about everything? What's going on?
I think from a business standpoint, all businesses majority of them are taking some negative impact, right? I mean, whether it be some supply chain disruptions or whatnot. I mean, we can get into that later. But ideally, right now, what I see personally in my own business is, it's governmental restrictions on closing, let's say, clinics or health clubs or anywhere where people congregate. So what we're noticing right now is that, let's say, majority of our clinics, our cryo clinics around the world are currently closed due to the governmental restrictions.
Even though cryotherapy is an immune boosting treatment.
Correct. So look, I'm not saying that all the cryotherapy centers around the world are closed, but the ones that we have under our brand are majorly in major cities. And all those major cities have some sort of, let's say, more severe lockdown than other places. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that we're also manufacturers of cryotherapy devices, and we're still delivering these devices because some businesses, whether they be wellness centers, longevity centers, some of them are being able to operate. And obviously, people are looking at alternative health more so now than they did before, right? Preventative healthcare. I mean, cryotherapy in general, I mean, it's made for inflammation, but there's a lot of immune strengthening related things in there as well. So coming to your question on how is it being impacted, I mean, from a manufacturing standpoint, a lot of our components in our cryogenic technology used to come from China, as all electronic or medical devices do. So, but we kind of preempted that from, let's say, mid-January when we started to see that the supply from China was being disrupted. And that's one major part which we've had to adjust. So that's a supply chain disruption, which is directly impactful. And then, let's say, when you move to alternative components and supplies in your technology, you also realize that you need to, again, retest, stress test, which takes more time. So from that perspective, that's a direct impact from China. Now, from the COVID standpoint, now we are thinking more in terms of how do we keep our team safe? How do we keep our people healthy? Because currently, it seems like the medical device sector is seen as an essential manufacturing or business that needs to remain open. So we are still manufacturing. We still are shipping all around the world, but now the more direct impact from today is that we're seeing that ports and logistics companies are also starting to shut down. So not only our shipping costs have obviously gone higher, but at the same time now people who do want these devices are not being able to get them because of the logistical challenges they're having.
Okay, so that's the cryotherapy equipment point of view. What else is going on in your portfolio?
So, for example, direct-to-consumer brands are, depending on if they're essential or non-essential, are definitely starting to see the impact. People are starting to see that, first of all, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have the same income. What's my job security? So they're obviously going to be looking at purchasing items which are not luxuries. They're non-essentials, are out of the door. So definitely a down over there. But for example, things that help with sleep and anxiety, whether they be CBD or whether they be weighted blankets, you're starting to see that people are wanting to have this right now to, let's say, be less stressed out. And we also have some interest in wellness and fitness. And obviously, fitness centers are all shut. Majority of them are. I mean, anyone who's has some sort of business conscious have now currently closed down because they just don't want to be the point of being able to spread it, even if the government is telling them that they can still operate. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that a rise of digital content is coming out. I mean, digital and home wellness and apps and fitness and all of that was already a growing category, but now you're starting to see that all the offline brick and mortar businesses are being forced to go digital to be able to speak to their customer now. And from a long-term perspective, that is the way that we should be looking at it, right? I mean, people are starting to see that the benefits that they get from remote fitness and let's say even meditation is pretty much the same as if you would go to a center and do it there. I mean, of course, there's going to be a consumer journey, there's going to be more in-person community, but people are being forced to move into the digital side of things. So that's another part that we're looking at from a business standpoint. And then lastly, just from investments, anyone who has invested into this market or any market, into financial products, stocks, bonds, you name it, are definitely being hit hard as well. So we've had to make adjustments over there on our strategy. On long term, are we looking at liquidating a lot of those? Are we looking at now rebuying, doubling down, and taking advantage? Is this the bottom? So many different things are at play here from a business standpoint. Yeah.
And speaking to the gym side of things, the fitness center, we're hopefully going to have Stuart joining us, your partner in that, who is kind of doing very interesting things fast. Well, he's been planning for it for a long time, but like moving fast from physical locations into digital group classes, etc.
Yeah. I mean, on that aspect, I think that you're already starting to see home hardware coming into play. So your Peloton bikes, your treadmills, which offer, let's say, online classes. But at the same time, now what we're starting to see is that businesses like Stuart's could ideally have such a larger footprint where they're not only doing your HIIT classes and your yoga classes in the constriction of their space, but they can ideally be able to broadcast that globally into platforms. And if you do have a really good product in brick and mortar, you're seeing that can actually pay much larger dividends on the talent and on, let's say, the practices that class is teaching when you move it into the real world. So he's definitely, what he's working on is mainly trying to bring digital to all the, let's say, brick and mortar businesses, because ideally he's going to be able to offer that service and bring those businesses that are currently, were anyways a dying sort of breed, but they're starting to stimulate them with a new sort of, let's say, revenue stream. Pretty much.
Yeah, no, I also saw it was interesting that you're immediately moving into like leasing out the equipment for home use. Like where if you have like an expensive, gym standard bike, you can lease it to the client and then have them pulled into the group classes as well. Is that something you're doing, right?
Yeah, that's something that they implemented right away as a tool to battle the COVID lockdown, right? They said, okay, if no one can come to us, maybe what we can do is we can send these spinning bikes or whatever equipment they may have to them, and then be able to broadcast on IGTV or Zoom to be able for someone to pretty much do the class in the comfort of their own home and in a safe situation. So that's something that's happening. Yep.
That's using the actual bikes that they have in the gym?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So,
nice.
So yeah, I mean, look, all businesses are sort of making adjustments to, but these are more like governmental, let's say, restrictions currently and whatnot. And what we see is that depending on how the severity is in different countries, the lockdown will probably be a little bit shorter. But let's say, for example, what we see is that this is actually going to change. The trends were already moving in this direction. They're just being accelerated in the fitness side of things. And people are having to, people innovate most when, they have the pressure on them in terms of, what can we do to have some continuity in our business? And that's like the common theme that we're seeing in everyone. Everyone needs to pivot and let's say refocus, recalibrate their strategies on being able to see what the new real life is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that brings us to let's pause on the business side of things. We were wanting to speak a little bit about how to approach this whole situation. I think that leads what you were just saying leads nicely into it. Well, how are you thinking we should be dealing with this current climate and everything?
So I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot just from let's say a macro standpoint, right? Firstly, what this whole epidemic has taught us is that the whole system is really fragile, right? Whether it be the financial markets, whether it be the transport system, whether it be anything that we're starting to see, your government, your healthcare systems, they're being developed incorrectly in terms of what are people wanting to purchase, what are they looking to invest into, is a little jaded, right? I mean, like, ideally people are saving their money to buy the next iPhone or like to buy a better car and consume, and businesses and capitalism is built around that, right? Whether also it be the hospital systems, whether it be the transport system, whatever it is, it's about, all this innovation has happened through capitalism. But there's also a point where, okay, this is enough. We don't really need to have more of a certain item, whether it be a phone, a car, whatever it is, right? Like, we don't need to have so much of this. We ideally need to be able to say, okay, now we need to put our resources and our energy and our innovation towards things which, which is going to be, let's say, epidemic proof or COVID proof, right? Ideally, another thing that I'm thinking about a lot is homeschooling, right? People are their children are at home. They're pretty much going to probably have to learn online for a while. Now, even our school systems could have really adopted this digital sort of facet to it much earlier, but it's so important to go to a really expensive Ivy League university in order for you to have the best education. But now what people are going to realize through this is that it's all the same, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to put a professor from a very good university online, and if people are tuned in, they're learning the best, right? So I think all these different sort of aspects, healthcare is just, education is just one of them, right? I mean, if you look at it from a, let's say, investment, venture capitalist, private equity standpoint, that's where the problem is, right? If something's working, it's let's say doing well. Now, I'll give you an example of I'll give you an example of our own, like, say, cryotherapy equipment manufacturing standpoint, right? Now, because of the healthcare system, we know, for example, cryotherapy is good for the health. I mean, in most countries, it's covered by your national health service, like in Germany and in Poland.
Give people a quick primer on what cryotherapy is, just in case.
Sure. Yeah. So cryotherapy is the exposure to your body to sub-zero temperatures of less than minus 140 degrees Celsius. That's our definition of cryotherapy. But in general, cryotherapy is the exposure to low temperatures, whether it be an ice bath, whether it be an ice pack, whether it's taking a cold shower, or what we do is we manufacture technology where you can go to a lower temperature, and rather than being in an ice bath for 30 minutes, you just need to be in a cryogenic chamber, or a cryo chamber as we call it, for 3 minutes. And actually what the history of cryotherapy, where it comes from, is to treat rheumatoid arthritis and to treat any inflammation-related diseases, to bring that down. So it's always been a medical treatment. But over time now, it's become more adopted by the sports community because you reduce inflammation, you can recover faster. And that's when another part where we connect on is the biohacking side. Is ideally it's also great because you're having physiological reaction in your body, which is creating norepinephrine and endorphins and making you feel good, and increasing your cognitive functions just the same way like a cold shower would do in the morning. So that's what cryotherapy is. Now, since the 70s.
Just to add something on it, one of the fundamental principles of like becoming stronger is shocking your system. So you can do that by working out in the gym and breaking down your muscle fibers. You can do that by going in a sauna and having heat exposure, cold exposure. That's cryotherapy, fasting, not eating, stressing yourself in that way. All of these make you stronger. So I just wanted to add that part.
Yeah. Look, what goes on physiologically in your body is there's so many different things. Ideally, as you said, it's putting your body into a state of shock because it's never experienced, or it doesn't usually experience such extreme conditions, right? So ideally, your blood circulation starts to increase. You're starting to keep your body warm, and this is obviously looking at it from a very bird's eye view without getting the details of what proteins and enzymes are being built in your body, but it's ideally just making you work harder, right? So from that perspective, that's what a biohacking community will look at. But coming back into, there's over 3,500 of these clinics around the world now. So there's obviously people wanting to do this treatment and they're seeing the benefits of it. And we see that firsthand. People who can't usually walk or they have stiffness in their joints, have arthritis, can do cryotherapy a bunch of times and they can really feel the perks of it by having movement again in their hands and being pain-free. Now, coming back to the COVID scenario of it, now, because the healthcare system, the FDA, the CE medicals, all of these certification bodies are also built through innovation and obviously from a financial model of insurance or the National Health Service, that now when people are starting to see that, look, we need to actually stay healthier. We need to look at preventative healthcare rather than curative healthcare, where let's say when we get sick, then we're going to go and find a doctor who can do a surgery on us, right? And that's where we see that we're going to see in the long term, your healthcare certification bodies are going to start seeing that, look, we need to look at therapeutics and preventative healthcare more strongly. So that's something that I see directly in it. And, the healthcare system right now is, it's really being stressed, right?
In the US.
In the US and everywhere. I mean, my sister is a surgeon in London, and yesterday she's actually been put on the Corona task force, and now she has to be in pretty much isolation or having social distancing, extreme social distancing till August 1st. And what she's telling us is that, listen, there's not enough respirators, there's not enough infrastructure built up for something like this. Yeah. Why is that? Okay, obviously maybe this is our, let's say, first rodeo in our current technological snapshot of something like this. Maybe, cholera and the plague might have been a little bit earlier, but see, this is a wake-up call for the healthcare system to start thinking about, okay, we need to obviously cater for something like this to happen, but there's a lot of things in healthcare which probably are going to be re-looked at, which probably will move towards elective treatments, right? That's just something that I see that's going to start happening due to this COVID scenario, right? And obviously, what I think when it's happening to us now, doctors and physicians are realizing what a grim situation they're in, right? And having to choose between the life and death of a 65-year-old and a younger person being dependent on the hardware that's available to you is something that we shouldn't be in this position, right? I mean, as I said, we were planning for the wrong things, pretty much from a health standpoint.
Just a quick shout out to Shabani for taking one for the team, if you will.
Sure.
Look, what views do you have on businesses persevering during these times?
That's a good question. So, I mean, we've been having pretty much since January emergency board meetings and strategy meetings and whatnot, and business continuity. I mean, initially, I think people were looking at it as something very short term, and we're going to be able to, let's say, in a month or two, be fine. But now, obviously, people are looking at it from a long term perspective, and initially, you need to make adjustments in your business depending on how it's being impacted directly at that time. You need to treat the acute problem. But eventually what you need to start looking at is, okay, I need to plan that if my business is going to be let's say shut down for 30 days, then, what sort of working capital do I need? How do I sustain and get through this period financially is one. Another is, let's say strategically, how am I going to pivot? How do I move, let's say, my business to digital? What I can tell you now, out of all of these meetings that we've had over the last, let's say, 2 months, is that now it's reached a point where we've realized that everyone's in the same boat, right? If you're trying to put out a fire and something seems really extreme and it's stressing you out, you can take it down a notch because everyone is feeling the same thing. And, it's kind of a force majeure type of situation where, your suppliers, customers, everyone they're going to understand that, hey, that this is, some things are beyond our control at this point. So we kind of put everything aside, and our main focus currently is to make sure that our teams and our people and our community are safe and they're healthy, right? I think that businesses that are going to be able to project that and be able to hold on to their people, make sure that, this is a blip. Businesses have been around for a long time, especially old businesses. They need to stick with their people, make sure that they keep them employed, or make sure that, okay, if they can't keep them employed, that there needs to be some sort of mechanism on making sure that we can support them through this period, right? And eventually, I think the businesses that are going to, let's say, come back and fall on their feet are going to be the ones that were able to preserve that sense of community and being there for their teams and their, let's say, partners and community. So I think that's our biggest learning currently. And we're stressed out, right? We're definitely stressed out. But I think over the last week, I guess also because we've been talking about it since January, we've realized that there's a lot of things that are not in our control. So, okay, yes, of course, we can have a long-term strategy on what's going to happen in December and January. But what my recommendation would be is, those are two very, very different things. I mean, focus on your short-term goals and look at it from a day-to-day perspective, keep monitoring the situation. But I would say, as I always say, even to you, is, plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? And that's kind of the situation that I think we're in right now.
Yeah, and I think the Stoic philosophical framework of identifying or distinguishing between things you have full control over, things you have some control over, and things you have no control over. It's a pretty good framework, especially in these kinds of super stressful times. Okay, moving on. So which resource or authority have you been recommending the most, and why? Or which authorities have been influencing your perspectives? Who are you following?
I can tell you who I'm trying not to follow is the WhatsApp forwards. Yeah, that's what I'm trying not to forward, listen to too much. But I mean, look, I think I'm preferring the information coming from people that I know and who have, let's say, a very good grasp of the situation. So, I mean, from a medical standpoint, I'm going to my family or my sister in particular for understanding, medically what we need to be doing in order for us to stay healthy, or how do we protect ourselves. Definitely some subscriptions like your Financial Times, Reuters, right? I rather not be looking at country-specific information. Like, I think when I'm looking at the BBC, all I'm going to hear is about Prince Charles getting it. I want to be able to understand a little bit of everything. So I think New York Times and the Telegraph are also great. So those are the ones that I'm looking into. And I mean, from a book standpoint, I mean, currently there's so many books that you can read about crisis management and whatnot. I think, but right now it's more about staying sane and, let's say, refocusing and bringing what's most important to light. And I think for those, books like The Outliers or something like that, start thinking a little bit outside the box is something that I would probably recommend right now.
Nice. Okay. Have you made any purchases or investments, in response to the situation?
Purchases. I upped my Zoom account. That's for sure. I upgraded Zoom account. I mean, honestly, I haven't really made any purchases more than usual. To be completely honest, I was kind of complaining about the fact that we started doing all this stocking in the house and starting to purchase everything, from a doomsday perspective. But I think that's also okay. That's maybe well planned, but ideally, from a food standpoint and what's coming into our home, there hasn't been anything too drastic. So I wouldn't say from a purchase standpoint there's anything different that I'm doing.
Home workout equipment.
I have that already, but yeah, ideally, I would definitely invest into. If I didn't have it, I would purchase everything to do with home fitness. Right? I would maybe get a bike, maybe get a treadmill, maybe get bands. You do your online workouts with, let's say, weights as well. So yeah, all of that. But I haven't had to purchase that. I mean, I think definitely more supplements coming from you on how to stay healthier. You gave me some of those immunity ones recently. So yeah, those are the things I think from a purchase standpoint coming into the house. And from an investing standpoint, I think earlier on, everyone was getting a little too excited. And this is part of the problem of saying that, hey, well, how can I try to, let's say, benefit from the situation by investing into stocks and whatever it may be. I think people who did that earlier have realized that was nowhere close to the bottom. And, people were looking at purchasing, your blue chip, class A type of companies, whether they be Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all of that. And don't get me wrong, I think these companies are definitely going to come back. And if you're looking at a long-term investment, yes, it's probably a good time to buy these if you think that this is the lowest it's going to go. But from my perspective, I'm realizing that what I thought was the low is getting even lower. Maybe there's going to be a correction now again. But I would say just be smart. I mean, ideally look at investing into, there's stocks which have done pretty all right. For example, Zoom is doing pretty well, but it really, I don't think I want to make any recommendations on anything like that.
Yes. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've kind of alluded to it earlier in the conversation, but I'm just going to ask it again because it's worth repeating. So what have been your biggest learnings or takeaways from the whole crisis?
I think the fragility of the system. It comes down to the fragility of your system. I think when you realize that you won't be able to travel, you won't be able to do business as usual. You're invested into things which are not in your control, right? I think all of that overall has been the big learning for me. And coming back to your basics of what you need is, your essentials, your home, your food, your health, right? Your family, making sure that those things are stable. I think that's been something that's really that's brought, let's say, some enlightenment over there. But I think when we were speaking earlier the other day, I think what we also realized was, I think we're going to see a shift now of where things need to move towards. People need to recalibrate and realize that, look, you need to be, first of all, saving your money for things that really matter, right? And make sure that your choices are sustainable, right? So overall, by reducing your, let's say, wants personally, right, you're going to be able to allow the system itself to move in the right direction and be able to grow in the right directions, right? So I think personally, that's my biggest learning is be able to bring things in a little bit, be able to not over leverage yourself in terms of your expenses, your health, your business, your people around you, right? And don't take things for granted that way.
Yeah. So as a result of this, are you going to be, let's say, being strategic about the potential other crises that might emerge? Because, there is this whole survivalist prepper scene out there of people who, are ready for the apocalypse. And this is just one, instance of that. And they've got food stored, they've got places to go, etc. How are you looking? Are you going to be actually making, shifts and kind of like hedging, like, having some of the portfolio in like companies like Zoom or things like that, or what actually?
So look, I think I'm an optimist. So I think all the time I'm going to be looking at it from a positive standpoint that, look, eventually things will work out. I think this is the reality that these type of viruses may come again, right? And doesn't matter where they come from, but they may happen again, right? And
The virus is just one potential shock. There are all types of other shocks, Where do you draw the line?
So maybe we go back a little bit and think about it this way, is that, look, if you look at it, the whole earth is an organism, and we're, over the last millions of years, there's so many things being done by us, or even, let's say, other organisms that are, let's say, taking its resources, being able to pollute it, being able to extract a lot out of it, which is resulting in, earthquakes, climate change, whether it be anything to do with how it's negatively being impacted. I'm also at least looking at it from a perspective that maybe this is a correction that is happening in order for things to come back to, let's say, a normality, right? Whether it be deforestation, because if it's coming from a perspective that is coming from an animal which is, let's say, in too proximate and with different sort of species, is happening due to some sort of deforestation, right? So I don't know I don't think I would want to even plan for the next one. I think I want to be prepared. And now that we know something like this can happen, then you can build a buffer and develop a plan. But I don't think I'm going to be like, hey, putting it into my forecast of saying, hey, this is when it's going to be happening.
Okay, fine. Okay, moving topics. Did you change your morning rituals or routines as a result of this everything?
No, overall the routine is still the same, but it's just now at home. Sorry?
Behind closed doors.
Yeah, behind closed doors. Still training and making sure that we are staying active. From a routine standpoint, definitely what I'm starting to realize is that I'm in front of the screen much more, right? And that's when I started thinking, I'm like, oh, this is probably us falling back into that trap of overdoing one thing. But at the same time, from the routine standpoint, I even have parents who are a little elder. So this obviously switches a different sort of compartment in your mind of always being worried there. So I think from a daily routine standpoint, on checking on family and making sure that everyone's good is definitely an adjustment.
Beautiful. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for all of sharing all of your thoughts and ideas and views. I was wondering, do you have any parting words for the audience? What would you like to leave them with?
I think I'd like to leave them with the fact that we're all in this together, and currently having a sense of community and being there for each other and being able to, let's say, share the right facts with each other is allowing us to be able to prohibit this from growing, right? So I think that's the main thing that I would take away, is that be there for each other and make sure that like everyone is safe and staying healthy.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks
awesome,
again.
buddy.
Ciao.